All right. This is an awesome one for all my optimists. Today is Tim Sullivan from the Birmingham Legion. I couldn't be more excited for a person who's helping to lead the growth and community and fan engagement for the Legion. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into this, and I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I did. Take me back 20 years and get me to today in 2 minutes. Go.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town in Connecticut that's on the Long Island Sound. The town is Madison. And if you drew a line south from Hartford to the Sound, it's right there. It was a beautiful place to grow up, similar to Birmingham, and particularly, whether it be Mountain Brook or Vestavia or Homewood, the public schools were excellent. And so it allowed for opportunities. Um, to learn a lot, but also to get a feel towards where you wanted to go. Um, I had the benefit after finishing high school to go to the University of Vermont, and I played lacrosse in college, and that was kind of my ticket because I have five sisters and two brothers, and so if we wanted to go out of state, we had to make certain that we got help.
Yeah, that's great. So, how was the team? How was the lacrosse team when you were there in Vermont?
Not as good as they are now. And I give that it's a credit to coaching, and probably it might have been a fact. I might have been a mitigating factor for why they weren't as successful as they could have been.
What position did you play?
I was a face-off midi and an X-Man.
Okay. So, just some sort of solidarity in this is I played soccer my entire life, and I went to boarding school in Rome, Georgia, and they started a lacrosse team the first year I was there. And then because I was a fifth year senior, Georgia didn't let me play varsity soccer, and lacrosse wasn't a varsity sport. So they asked me to play lacrosse, which is, and I was a midi. They're like, oh, that guy will run all day. I got my ass kicked so bad. I would do stupid things like stop the ball with my foot and then scoop it up with the net and start running with it. It was like I just trying to convert to a stick and ball from using your feet your entire life was it was a joke. I never scored. I ran a lot. I get hit so many times. I can't even tell you. Like I wasn't interested in playing lacrosse again after.
I don't blame you. Although, I think when it's played well, one of the nice parts about it is it's kind of a blend of soccer, hockey, basketball, and obviously with some physical pieces where football can kind of come into play too. And so I always felt kind of hand-eye and athleticism within that sport was similar to hockey, and I always think hockey players had the best hand-eye of all.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is in the South, and I don't know if you ever did any men's league or anything down here, but in the South, that really was like a bunch of football players. And so we replaced skill for aggressiveness and, hitting people. And so that's like, and when we played teams from like farther up north, they smoked us. It wasn't even like it wasn't a, you just stood there and they were just passing around. You're like, this is dumb.
Yeah, this isn't fun.
You're out of Vermont. Where do you go next?
So, interesting, kind of time in life, and I was trying to figure out, what was the best step and where was the best location to go. And job market wasn't great, and I think the two best choices for folks who go to any school in New England is sort of Boston or New York. New York to me was always a bit more attractive just because of how big it was, and it was kind of to me the place where if you worked hard and you hustled, it would allow you opportunities that you may not get elsewhere. And then first job I was able to land, interestingly enough, was a job at the Olympics in Salt Lake City, and ended up working for Sports Illustrated out there, truly as like a gopher. It's like go do anything that you can and make sure that you help all our clients. And I shook everybody's hands and I asked for business cards, and then my dad gave me from some pretty sage advice. He goes, any person that you meet and you like them, ask them for two more people that you can talk with. And he's like, you'll automatically double your network. And I mean, I still use it to this day. I think it is as good a piece of wisdom as I ever got. I'm glad I held on to it.
Hey, that really is. That's awesome. We should learn to do that all a little bit more, right?
It's hard now just because I think the nature of how people live a lot is through your device and your telephone. And so due to the amount of time that people spend on it, it can become isolated. And if for me, I didn't have a cell phone until I think my third year I lived in New York City. And so we used to call, when payphones still existed, we would call through like a card, and then you'd find out where people were, and then you hoped by the time you got there that they'd still be there. Um, and I laugh just because obviously human behavior illustrates that cell phones are, a wonderful piece of technology. I do though think I miss the days where if you got to know people and you got to talk to people, it gave you opportunities to do more.
For sure. Well, that's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast thing. It's not because I think the world needs another podcast, or certainly to hear what I have to say, but I just enjoy talking to people so much and human interaction. Like, we're losing this over time. You talking about payphones, by the way, makes me remember two things. We're of the age when, like, our parents taught us to always carry a quarter around in our pocket in case we had to
Yes,
call someone. Well, we also used to remember phone numbers.
right.
And I remember the way we used to do it. Like, there's one I'll never forget, and I can't remember the first three digits, but I would, our number was like 205-555 Don Beebe, Don Beebe. So you knew Don Beebe was number 82, and you just had to
It's like, yeah, it's so spot on. It's fantastic. And you're right. You're right because you had no other option. Because if you got to the payphone, you're like, oh man.
Yeah. I got to remember you knew about 10 or 15 numbers through one device or another that you had to keep like in your head.
Yep. Uh, and when I when I do the podcast piece to me is always compelling and interesting, and it's been really nice, and I enjoy listening to them. I enjoy obviously taking part in this discussion, but what's nice about it to me is that it's sort of reintroduced radio back to the public. And the video piece, of course, is nice because then from a digital standpoint, you can get a feel for how the person is. I think the stories that people have to tell are compelling, and everybody's is different. Often it's up to the individual. I'm sure you're quite skilled at this now, but it's just to ask the right questions in order for the other person to potentially explain what they feel or how they mean.
Yeah, you know what? I'm learning that. It's a skill. It really is. Like, I think interviewing people is a skill, and it's something that you've got to cultivate and you've got to learn, and especially when I was having a conversation with another guest recently, and she brought up this really uncomfortable situation that I had no frame of reference for. And I sort of glazed over it. And then we talked about it at the end because I was like, I just didn't know how to ask you more about it without sounding like an ignorant a-hole, like, oh, that must have been really weird to have that happen to you. And, and she's like, you're an idiot.
but even when you think of it, you think of the people that you would necessarily kind of construe as a good interviewer. And I never would have expected to say this publicly, but I think Howard Stern is a very good interviewer. And that has obviously occurred over the course of time, but that's something that I never would have expected come 20 years ago when his show first got on E. It's just like, and I also think Jon Stewart's a wonderful interviewer. It's
Yeah.
just certain people have a really good knack for it, but I think you do a good job of it. It's just being open-ended.
Oh, you're gonna make me blush. Well, I think part of it is really for me, and like we talked about this, I like the stories. I like hearing about how you got there. So I think we sort of derailed ourselves a little bit. Tell me again, how did we get to Birmingham? Let's land that plane.
So really, I worked in New York for probably the first 14 years of my life. and I moved down. I took a job with AT&T in their sponsorship group, kind of sports related, and I moved to Atlanta. Um, the the job ended. They kind of, as AT&T does, is they restructured, and so I ended up moving after my first 2.5 years in Atlanta. I moved back to New York. I had met my wife coincidentally the first week I had moved to Atlanta initially, but I never saw her again until I moved back to New York, and she and I were working for Time Inc. at the same time. Um,
Wow.
and then I told her, I was like, "Oh, hey, Carrie, it's great to see you." And she's like, "Who are you?" So I obviously didn't make a good a good impression the first time, but it gratefully it stuck. And then some cross state dating for a while, and then after we got married, I moved to Atlanta for the second time, and then I was recruited to come to Birmingham, and her sister had gone to Auburn and married a great guy from Hoover, and
Okay.
I was recruited to come to Birmingham to be the CRO of Bassmaster. And then
Okay.
after that, after about 3 years there, I was excited to get an opportunity to take the role with the Legion, just because stick and ball is kind of more my forte than fishing was.
Yeah. Then rod and fish.
Yep. Although I love to do it, but it's you only get better with practice. Unfortunately, didn't have enough days on the lake when I was younger.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a hard thing for me. I don't think I have the patience for it. And I've got a son though that loves to do it. And he is an outdoorsman through and through. So you kind of maybe by osmosis through him, I'll learn to be a little better at it. Um, so now we're at the Legion, and what's your primary role with the Legion? What are you doing there?
So it's the majority of my time is focused on sponsorship, but also having visibility towards how the club is performing, both strategically, but also from a revenue standpoint with things like tickets and potentially concessions and kind of game operations, and looking kind of strategically to say, where do we have opportunities to get better inside of the community? And then also too is, how do we increase fan engagement? How do we drive, you know, better storytelling efforts through our own and operated channels? And then take a look towards, where are ways we could differentiate ourselves? Because the hard part for anyone in Birmingham, and particularly professional sports, is just how big SEC football is. And it's neat to see, because obviously I didn't grow up in that same environment, and professional sports were always kind of the biggest draw, and whether that was NBA or NHL or NFL, um, or baseball. And so we kind of have to think creatively about, in our upcoming 6 years, how do we really continue to create a name for ourselves, and how do we drive the performance through the roster in order to continue to get better.
There's a lot of challenges in there, right? That's a that's a lot of things to have to contend with, and even with we don't have to go into this too much, but as a Alabama alumni, with the impending next 10 years of failure that we'll experience at the University of Alabama football program and Nick Saban's retirement, you never want to follow the goat, right? Nobody wants that job really, because they're always gone within 3 years.
But because I think today you guys signed Washington's coach, who did a really good job of, rebuilding that program pretty quickly. And so I think that's a challenge, just because Pac-10 hasn't really made much noise as it pertains to the college football playoffs. And so, it's a good mark, and kudos to him. And so the beauty of being able to come here is that you're recruiting from a local talent pool is strong.
Yeah, yeah, and there really is a good foundation that's set here. We'll see how it goes. You just basically broke that news for me. I didn't even know that yet. So that's the way I learned. This is the way I learned that we got a new coach, and the way I learned that we lost Saban as a coach is I was at the grocery store picking something up, and one of my son's friends turns around and looks at me. I was like, "Hey, Walter," and he goes, "Saban quit," and that was it. That's how I learned out that Saban had
Drop
retired.
the mic. I'm out.
That was it. Yeah, I was like, "No, that is that. Yeah, maybe,
Really?
maybe." Yeah,
But we
yeah,
it,
that's true.
it kind of leads me, and we have something fun actually that's going on tomorrow, is we're doing an open tryout. And we've had some movement in the roster and some availability, and we've got about 60 guys who will come to Protective tomorrow. And we'll likely set up 4 teams of 15 guys or so, and we'll run through drills, and in the hopes that we can find the diamond in the rough. It's and I think it's possible. And we have some guys coming in from out of state. There's a couple coming in from other countries, and I'll be there, making sure that all the registrants get to come in around 9. But it'll be enjoyable for me because then I get a chance to sit and watch for a couple hours and see how they do.
Yeah. It's funny. Somebody sent me a because I played soccer, played club soccer at Alabama, and I tried out for the Silverbacks many years ago, and that was the only tryout I really did. I was just kind of like, see if it works, and it didn't. But I had a friend of mine send me, a link to the open tryout, and I said, I'm going to be the Vince Papali.
Yes, exactly. I want that story to come to life, because what I would love to see, nothing more, is just because we're playing Atlanta United in 2 weeks on the 27th at 2 p.m. It would be amazing to see someone who, came in from out of nowhere and then is dressed and potentially has the opportunity to play. I mean, stuff like that is a fairy tale for sure.
That's right. That's right. I think that's really cool. So, a couple things that you sort of mentioned about, you know, the Birmingham, soccer, some of the challenges, some of the things that's going on. You talked a little bit about perception and fan engagement and better storytelling, and and how do you create more community engagement, and certainly someone who dearly loves the sport. How are we growing that audience? Because Protective, first off, it's you talk perception comes to mind, right? Protective is a big stadium, and so even when we've got a lot of fan engagement, sometimes it might not even look like it because it's so big. How are we growing? How are we getting more people butts in seats, essentially? What are some of those initiatives?
The first things is that I think it's on us, and are responsible to doing a better job of telling people, when we're playing, and showcasing how much fun it is to come. Because what I love the most about the sport is that you can leave your house, you can go, and you can get home, and it's really in less than
Yep.
3 hours. Um, and beyond that, it's continuous action with a lot of drama that unfolds during the course of the match, based upon calls, based upon performance, and based upon um, you know geometry of the ball. And so it makes it compelling because it's never the same, and you can't say cut and dry as, hey, this is how it's going to turn out. There's so much unknown that it makes it fun to see. But where we could use help, um, and I think this isn't unique just to us. I imagine that the USFL struggles with this at times, and I think, albeit probably a little less so, but I'm sure the Squadron do and the Barons do, is just that because American football is such a primary focus inside of Alabama, um, is building better communications and relationships with the press would allow for us potentially to get outside of the folks that already know who
Mhm.
we are. And again, I think it's a club responsibility, and it's, how are you communicating to them, and are you giving them access to players, and are you giving them the ability to provide their audience with content that's hard to get elsewhere? And does it feel special or unique? And I think if we do those things, then a larger audience can come. But and this is where I'm grateful, and it's a credit to Jay for the work he's done, is that performance in any sport is what's going to help determine how engaged your fan base is. And if your team isn't very good, obviously it's hard to generate that type of support for a game that most people aren't as familiar with as they would be for,
Yeah.
American football. The the compelling piece though to me is the engagement from a youth standpoint with soccer around Birmingham. And there's a lot of players, and as such, there's a lot of families and parents who understand the game. Sometimes we just need to figure out how to start a conversation with the folks that are going and tagging around with their kids and have to go to 3 to 4 games every weekend. Can we squeeze another 2 to 3 hours of soccer out of them, which is hard.
Yeah, well, so I'm that family, right? I've got 3 kids that play soccer, and sometimes you're just like, I'm tired of being at a soccer field at this point.
I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Yes, and I completely understand. And so then, what I try and ask myself is, if if you were to come to the soccer game, is what would be the experience that would be both exciting for your kids as well as for you? And are they different or are they the same?
Yeah, I can answer that question. I love watching the sport. I think and certainly in Birmingham, Alabama, I'm somewhat unique in that. Obviously, there's a number of people who do, but I can watch almost any game and enjoy it because I watch a ton, I played a ton, and so I know what's going on the field, good, bad, or indifferent in a lot of cases. I'm not saying I should be like a manager and coaching anywhere, but I do have a very unique perspective. And something you talked about, is how to get people who are the uninitiated. And I think part of that is the fans' responsibility, right? I think it's part my responsibility to invite someone to the game that doesn't know and explain to them what's going on and why it's important. Because I've had people do that for me for like baseball. I didn't play baseball growing up, and baseball is boring to watch on TV, but going to a game and having someone explain to you the intricacies of what's happening and why, that makes it really interesting. Now, my kids, they like 2 parts about it. One is they like going to live events and doing stuff and getting out and having Coca-Colas and popcorn and all that stuff. Like that in and of itself, that's fun to them. They kind of like watching the game, but I've got 11, 9, and 7. So they're not trying to be on the national team. They just enjoy going to the event. And, if I've got one kid, they like to kind of talk about what's happening on the field a little bit, and that's sort of fun. So I think, like, obviously engagement with the kids in some more kid friendly type things, or the things that they're looking for. Like, is there a ice cream truck somewhere, or is there a game where I can win a prize? Like the stuff my kids would do for a piece of Bubblicious or a Snickers bar is
A
ridiculous.
t-shirt, yeah, or a
That's right.
t-shirt, yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that they're you know looking for. Otherwise, it's just the fun of going to the event. And like you said, you can go, oh, there's a game in 30 minutes. Let's go let's go to the game and let's go check it out. And if we don't even stay the whole time, that's okay. It's just fun to go and watch it and support the team, and go to the museum afterwards or go get something to eat, whatever else. So I have a very unique perspective in that, because I'm that person you're sort of looking for. Like, I'm the guy that you really want there. 3 kids, soccer family, wants to be there and support the team and have my kids there. And, I'm kind of your target market.
The beauty too, and I think this will, it allows for different consideration and ideas, which is good. It's just that what we try and make certain of is that the tickets are affordable, and kind of one of the things that I push towards a lot is, you know, we should market kind of socially is, if you go to a Legion match and get GA tickets and you get a Coke and a popcorn or a hot dog for a family of 4, it's less than it is to take a family of 4 to the movies. And it's less than it is to take your family out to
For
dinner,
sure.
and then it's fractional in comparison to the cost to go to 4 for a University of Alabama football game. And so that I think allows the barriers of entry to be less. But I do think creatively as a club, you know, I'll give you an idea, which is didn't come to life, but one that is in my mind, and I'd love to make occur. But a good example would be a company like Windy,
Yep.
which is in Birmingham. And one of the thoughts that I had was, would Windy want a suite where they could potentially bring two sitters to a suite and families could come and drop their children off to have the experience in the suite, and then they got 2 hours to be by themselves in a specific section.
Tell me where
It's
to
just
sign up.
like that. Yeah, like it's just like because I think I would do that. It's like I'd be like, all right, and for one reason or another, it's never connected. But I like it's being mindful of what's important, what makes it fun. I think we and a lot of this, and again, it's you have to. These are initiatives that you have to kind of build internally, and you also have to do a good job of promoting so that people know. I like the idea for us of doing, a night that was dedicated or a lower price ticket for, the youth, but like who recently graduated and allowing them to network with one another and potentially giving them a drink special. It's just like create compelling times and ways for the audience to be able to interact with other people and talk and get to know one another. um, Other ideas that I play around in my brain with, it's like, could you do a night where a certain section was devoted towards dating apps, and so singles could come and interact and meet one another? Like that would be
That'd be
another one.
that'd be funny.
Um,
Maybe some liabilities in
yeah.
that one, but yeah.
Uh, it's probably why it's never
Um,
come to life, but it doesn't mean it prevents the thought. But the other stuff, and this is, I think, true for all sports, is we have an obligation internally to help distribute both USL and Legion through as many channels as we can in order to generate a bigger audience. And fan attendance, of course, is one of those, but how do we open up or broaden the discussion to have more people watch come my 68, or have inclusion in local news sports coverage? Because then I think if it's seen, people will say, oh, what's that? Or, hey, I'd always wanted to go to that. And simultaneously, we have to market, um, whether it's through digital out of home or out of home or through the web or through social, through broadcast. Is, how do we tell people when we're playing, who we're playing, and then try and build on the momentum that the team has, but then also too is help people understand who our rivals are, why we want to beat them, and do it in a way that's fun and allows everyone to enjoy, um, really a competitive squad. And five 5 years in existence, 5 years in the playoffs is strong. Obviously the hopes this year is that we
yeah.
can win it.
Well, yeah, that's you go in every year to win it, right? That's the nobody's bringing their silver polish at the beginning of the season.
It's like the same time as the NFL draft. Everyone thinks they got a champion.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I do love this open tryout thing that y'all have going on, and I love some of these ideas that you have are really they're fantastic, right? Like the Windy suite, it made me think about I joined the Y at one point when my kids were young because they had a place you could drop your kids off. I wasn't even working out. I just wanted to drop them off somewhere where I didn't have to talk to them for an hour.
Hey guys, I'm gonna go swim. I'll be right back. It's awesome. It is. I would love if I can bring that to life. That would be. I was sitting down with my wife one night, and we have a 5-year-old, and she's great. And but I was like, wouldn't it be nice if you could go to a sporting event? you know, you all were there, but then you got a chance to come scoop her up at the end of the game. And she's like, "Do you think it's possible?" I was like, "Well, there's a will, there's a way."
Yeah, it's like a kids club like they have at the itty bitty city at the McWayne Center. They can't leave without, a DNA test.
I also love going in there because it's the only time I feel tall.
I love that. Where you going, Tim? Going to get my weekly ego boost.
Yeah,
I'll be back in a little while.
I'll be back.
I totally love that. So, I mean, you've been talking about a few of these things. Are there any other, initiatives in 2024. And by the way, I want to go repeat this real quick before we jump on that. 5 years in existence, 5 years in the playoffs. I don't tell me another team that's done that. You're not going to have very many. That's a short list. And that's really a credit to the organization and the recruiting and the coaching, top to bottom. Like, you don't do that by accident.
It is, and I know I said it earlier, but it's really a credit to Tommy, and it's a credit to Jay, who are well aligned and have worked together for years. And it's fun for me, to sit and learn and listen and get to see kind of the relationship they have, because it works well, and it has to, because when you're USL, and yes, we're in the highest division of the USL, but still is, some of it is grassroots and some of it is creativity, and you try and stretch your budget and your means as much as you can.
Yeah, that's right. Well, everybody's got a budget to a degree. Obviously, some are a lot bigger, but yeah, there's always a certain a point where you just can't spend any more money, right? You can't throw more money at the problem. So, but let's go back to the original question, which is, so for 2024, what are some things you're really excited about that y'all have that are going to happen? Initiatives you've initiated?
I'll kind of give a clue or a hint. Obviously, the match against Atlanta United on the 27th is a big one, and what we want to do is continue kind of to elevate the experience that occurs in Protective, like we had last year during the Open Cup with Charlotte and Miami. And what we saw were two attendance records back to back, from that match, and in hopes that we can get to those same type of levels for this game. Um, Other than that, there'll be another exhibition that'll be announced, probably in about 3 to 4 weeks time, which will be a pretty high profile one as well. And then for the first game, and this is kind of the clue, is we're gonna have a kit release, a new kit release and launch. That's upcoming, and it's awesome. And having watched kind of that, develop and build over the past couple months has made it exciting, because it's one of those things that incorporates Birmingham very well into the stylings and the renderings inside of the jersey.
Oh, that's great. I love kits like that. I'm really excited about that.
And I'll be certain what I'll do is, once they're available, I'll make sure to send one your way. That's easy.
This was all worth it then. I'm good. See you later, Tim.
But that's a fun one. I think we begin our home season starting at home in April. And our first match, I believe, is the 8th. It could be the 9th, but I think it's the 8th of April. And then we may have, pending the draw of the Open Cup, we may have a home match for the Open Cup, which would be in, I think, a week after that or 2 weeks after that. And so we could get, as long as we're playing well, we could get on that same type of path as we were on last year.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm really glad the MLS or US Soccer basically said, like, hey, MLS teams have to play in the Open Cup, because that's such a big draw for the USL teams, and that's really important to helping grow, grassroots soccer.
100% agree. Other things I tinker with, and none of this is real life, but I'm hopeful that USL can figure out promotion and relegation, just because I think if we can mimic the European model, I think it would create a really strong fan base. And because of the success that you've seen, whether it's viewership with Ted Lasso or Wrexham, it's just that I think the American audience understands it. And I also think it develops better relationships with the community of fans that surround each team.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that's the emotional investment that you need, and I think that's the biggest thing with getting people excited about it, is like, when you say, okay, here's this player and here's who he is and here's why it's important, you should be watching this person, then that human connection that we talked about at the beginning, you like that callback? That's the thing where they start to really care about what's happening on the field and the product and all those things. I couldn't agree more about promotion and relegation.
The nice part is those conversations are occurring. For me, I think it's one of those that I keep an eye on pretty closely, um, and I'm hopeful, and I think that's a good way to be, because I think the business of sports and the back end in sports at times can be complicated, and yet, what I know and what I like is that each day for me is a little different, but I get excited to wake up and go to work, and that for me, I'm grateful for sure.
For sure. Well, I for one, again, I'm emotionally invested in the team. I for one am really glad to have someone like you that's helping to lead the charge for growth. And because I mean everything we've talked about here are things that are really something to get excited about. So I say to you, thank you.
I appreciate it, and I will tell you thank you, for the opportunity to speak with you, and also too, it allows potentially someone you may not have checked us out before the ability to kind of learn and listen a little bit, and hopefully we can get them to come to the stadium too.
100%. That's right. We need some butts and seats, baby.
That's right.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to learn more about the Legion, learn more about you, where do they go? Where do we send them?
Sure. I mean, honest, I'm happy to respond to any and all emails. So tsullivan@bhmlegion.com, and please, give me your name, information. If you want to set aside time to talk or you have questions about the club, any and all information is welcome. I'm happy to answer it.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and this has been my pleasure for sure. So, thank you again, and we'll run into each other soon. We got to. I'll have to see you at a game.
That's right. Gail, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Same. All right. Bye.